In today's episode,
Quietly Stoic, a social survival guide for introverts, inspired by ancient philosophy, by Victor Odesnak.
All right, so today we're diving into Stoicism, but with a bit of a twist.
All right.
Our source material is Quietly Stoic, and I think you'll see why that title is so perfect in just a minute.
Yeah.
We're basically going to do a deep dive into how to use this ancient philosophy to survive social situations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, parties, networking events, especially if you're like me and you're maybe a little bit more, shall we say, selectively social.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So Quietly Stoic focuses on the introverted experience, which I think is really interesting because Stoicism itself doesn't discriminate based on personality type.
Right.
But the author, Victor Odesnak, is an introvert from Andalusia, Spain.
Okay.
Which is a place known for being very extroverted. And he even tells this funny story in the book about how his aunt was shocked that he got an A in social science because he was anything but social.
Huh. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So right off the bat, I feel like this book is speaking my language.
You see?
But I think even if you're not hiding in the corner at every gathering, Quietly Stoic has some really great advice. One of the biggest things is this P.A.C.E. framework, which we're going to unpack in a bit. But first, Odesnak really nails something that I think is so crucial, and that is understanding what introversion actually is.
Yeah, he really emphasizes the importance of self-awareness without self-judgment. And, recognizing that introversion is not a weakness.
Yes.
It's not something to fix. It's actually about understanding your strengths. And he points out that introverts have strengths they might not even realize they have, especially in social situations.
So true.
But we need to play to those strengths.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I think for so long I was like, oh, I'm a good listener, but I thought that was boring.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But this book really flips the script on a lot of those misconceptions that we have.
Yeah. One myth he tackles in the book is that confidence has to be loud.
Oh, interesting.
He says that true confidence is actually quiet and steady.
Okay.
It's not about being the loudest voice in the room,
Right.
but about knowing your worth, showing up authentically, kind of like a strong, silent type.
I love that.
You don't need to shout to be powerful.
So true. And that leads into another myth he tackles, which is the idea that small talk is pointless.
Which is a relief because I've always felt awkward making small talk.
Me too. I'm so glad he addressed this.
Me too.
But he makes this really interesting argument that small talk isn't the main event, it's the bridge to the main event.
Right.
It's those initial connections that can sometimes lead to more meaningful conversations.
Right. Think of it this way.
Okay.
You wouldn't barge into someone's house without knocking first, right?
Sure.
Small talk is like that polite knock.
Right.
It's a way to kind of ease into a conversation, find some common ground, and to gauge whether or not there's potential for a deeper connection.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we apply all of this, the Stoicism part, especially to those social situations that, make us want to disappear?
Right. Well, that's where the dichotomy of control comes in.
Okay.
This is one of the most powerful, I think, Stoic concepts.
Yeah.
And it's especially relevant, I think, to social anxiety. It boils down to this: focus on what you can control.
Okay.
And let go of what you can't.
Okay. I get the concept in theory, but how do we actually do that? I can't control whether people like me or not, right?
You're absolutely right. You can't. And that's precisely the point.
Okay.
You can control your thoughts, your words, your actions, how you present yourself.
Okay.
You can prepare conversation starters.
Right.
Choose what events to attend. Even plan an exit strategy.
Okay.
What you can't control is how other people react, what they think of you, or whether or not they want to talk to you.
That's where it gets tricky though, right?
Right.
Because I can prep all I want.
Yeah.
But if I walk into a room and I feel like everyone's judging me, it's hard to stay calm and collected.
It is hard, but that's where the Stoic mindset can be so helpful. It's about accepting that discomfort is a part of life and learning to navigate it without letting it control you. So imagine a scenario where you're worried about saying something awkward and embarrassing yourself at a party.
Okay. Yeah, I've been there.
Odesnak actually encourages us to think about that worst case scenario.
Wait, so you're saying I should picture myself tripping and spilling a drink and having everyone stare at me? Why would I want to do that?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah.
But the Stoics call this practice premeditatio malorum, and there's a reason for it.
Okay.
By mentally preparing for those worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
You take away some of their power. You realize that even if those things happen, it's not the end of the world.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could be helpful. So instead of getting trapped in that fear of what might happen,
Right.
you're basically saying, okay, even if that happens, I can handle it.
Exactly. It's about accepting that you can't control everything, but you can control how you respond.
And that sense of control can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
Especially for introverts who often feel at the mercy of their social anxieties.
This is making me rethink how I approach social situations entirely. It's less about trying to be perfect and more about just being present,
Yeah.
accepting whatever comes my way. Is that kind of what Odosnak means by quietly stoic?
But that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
He's not advocating for, becoming an emotionless robot,
Right.
but for having this inner strength that allows you to navigate the ups and downs of social life without getting swept away by them.
Yeah.
It's like having this quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own worth and not being dependent on external validation.
Okay, I'm all about that. So how does the P.A.C.E. framework fit into all of this? Is that where the practical advice comes in?
It is. And it's a game changer, especially for those of us who tend to feel overwhelmed by social situations.
Right.
Remember, it stands for prepare, anchor, connect, and exit.
It's a roadmap for approaching any social interaction with intention and calm, which takes away a lot of that uncertainty that can be so stressful.
Okay, so let's break it down. Where do we start?
The first step, prepare, is all about laying the groundwork for a more comfortable experience.
Okay.
Visualize the event,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just like a quick coffee with a coworker.
Right.
Set a clear intention for what you want to get out of it, like having one good conversation
Okay.
or simply practicing your listening skills.
So you're saying instead of going in with that vague dread of, I have to be social, I can actually focus on something specific and manageable.
Precisely. And Odosnak also suggests prepping some conversation starters,
Okay.
almost like having notes for a presentation, but for real life.
That's a great idea.
Maybe jot down a few open-ended questions,
Oh,
or recent things you've read or watched.
That takes away some of the pressure of trying to come up with brilliant things to say on the spot.
Exactly.
I can literally have a cheat sheet.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about giving yourself the tools to feel more comfortable and in control.
Love it.
And once you're at the event, the next step is to anchor yourself.
Okay, this sounds crucial because I know I tend to get in my head and overthink everything.
We've all been there. But instead of letting those anxious thoughts run wild,
Yeah.
quietly stoic gives us some techniques to ground ourselves in the present moment.
Okay.
One of the simplest is breath work.
Okay.
When you feel that anxiety creeping in, just take a few slow, deep breaths.
Yeah. It's amazing how something so simple can actually work.
It really is.
It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system.
It is.
Okay.
Another anchoring technique is to just focus on your senses.
Okay.
What do you see here? Smell, taste, touch?
Mm-hmm.
It helps bring you back to your body and out of that mental spiral.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about grounding yourself in the physical reality of the situation
Right.
rather than getting lost in those what-if anxieties.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm prepared.
Yeah.
I'm anchored.
Yeah.
Now what? This is where it gets scary, right? The
Yeah.
actual connecting with people part.
It can be, but remember, Odosnak emphasizes that connection doesn't have to mean working the room like a politician
Okay, good.
or being the life of the party.
Yeah.
It's about quality over quantity. It's
Yeah.
about those genuine moments of engagement,
Right.
even if it's just with one or two people.
That feels so much more doable.
It is.
But how do we make those connections without feeling like we're forcing it or like being inauthentic?
He breaks it down into steps that feel very manageable.
Okay.
Start small.
Okay.
You don't have to dive into deep conversations right away.
Right.
A simple compliment, an observation about the venue, or even just asking, how do you know the host, can be enough to break the ice.
It's like those little conversation hacks
Yes.
that take the pressure off having to be super witty or interesting right off the bat.
Exactly. And once you've got the conversation going, he encourages us to be genuinely curious about the other person
Okay.
instead of worrying about what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
Focus on really listening to what they're saying.
Oh, I can do that. I'm a good listener, as we've established.
Yes, you are. That's one of the introvert superpowers.
Amazing.
But it goes beyond just passively listening.
Okay.
Ask follow-up questions, reflect back what you've heard, look for those little points of commonality that can spark a more engaging conversation.
So it's like taking that initial spark and fanning it into a flame, but without feeling like you're putting on a performance or trying to be someone you're not.
Exactly. It's about being authentically you, but with that added layer of stoic intentionality and resilience.
Yeah.
It's about showing up with your quiet confidence, knowing that even if the conversation fizzles or things get awkward, it's not the end of the world.
You've got this.
You've got this.
I'm already feeling like more empowered just thinking about this. It's like I'm finally being given permission to be myself in social situations without all that pressure and self-judgment.
Yeah.
But there's one part of this whole equation that still fills me with dread. Even if the conversation's going well, the exit.
Oh, the dreaded escape. I know exactly what you mean.
How do we get out of there gracefully without looking like we're running for the hills?
Right.
Or even worse, getting trapped in like an endless conversation.
Don't worry. Odosnek has us covered there too.
Okay, good.
He provides some super practical tips for exiting without feeling guilty or awkward.
Okay.
And it all starts with tuning into your own energy levels.
Okay, so if I'm starting to feel drained, even if it's been a good conversation, it's okay to politely excuse myself.
Absolutely. It's about honoring your own needs.
Okay.
You've shown up, you've engaged, you've connected, you've done the work.
Yeah.
Now it's okay to prioritize your well-being.
This is such a relief to hear. But what about the actual, like, getting out part? I always feel so awkward trying to come up with the right thing to say.
Yeah, Odosnek suggests having a few go-to phrases ready.
Okay.
Like, it was great chatting with you, but I need to head out now. Or, I'm going to mingle a bit more, but it was lovely meeting you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Having those scripts ready takes away the pressure of trying to be clever or witty on the spot.
Exactly.
I can just be polite and move on. This is brilliant.
It is. It's about giving yourself those tools to navigate those tricky moments without feeling like you're constantly on edge.
I like it.
And that's the beauty of quietly stoic.
Yeah.
It combines this wisdom of this ancient philosophy with very practical, actionable advice that can make a real difference in how we experience social situations.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Odosnek doesn't stop there.
No, he doesn't.
He also provides some really interesting micro habits that we can cultivate to build our social confidence over time.
Yes.
Almost like training for a social marathon, but without the actual running.
I love that.
So what are some of the micro habits he suggests?
One of them is called the daily check-in.
Good.
It's about taking a few minutes each morning to set an intention for a specific social action you want to take that day. It could be as simple as greeting a colleague,
Right.
asking a friend how they're really doing, or even just making eye contact with the barista at your coffee shop.
That's such a great way to start the day, with a focus on connection rather than avoidance.
Exactly.
I love it. What are some other micro habits?
He also suggests practicing what he calls the 2-minute conversation.
Okay.
The idea is to strike up a brief low-stakes conversation with someone you encounter each day,
Okay.
just to kind of get comfortable with that flow of interaction.
It's like doing those conversation reps
Right.
without the pressure of having to sustain like a marathon conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it helps you realize that most people are actually quite open to those small interactions.
They are.
Yeah.
And another micro habit he recommends is to just celebrate those tiny wins.
Oh, I like that.
Instead of focusing on what we didn't do perfectly, he encourages us to acknowledge those small social victories.
Okay.
Did you make eye contact? Did you ask a question? Did you show up even though you were feeling anxious?
I love this. It's about shifting from self-criticism to self-appreciation,
Absolutely.
which can be such a game changer for introverts who often hold ourselves to like impossibly high standards.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay, what else?
And a final micro habit he suggests is to use gratitude as an anchor,
Okay.
especially in situations that might feel intimidating.
How does gratitude play into all of this?
So before entering a social situation, take a moment to think about something you're grateful for,
Okay.
even something small. It could be the opportunity to connect with others,
Right.
the chance to practice your social skills, or even just the fact that you're healthy enough to attend the event.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how gratitude can shift our perspective, isn't it? Instead of getting bogged down by anxiety, we can actually focus on like the positive aspects of the situation.
It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And Odosnek reminds us that these micro habits practiced consistently can add up to big changes in how we feel and how we interact with the world. I'm already feeling inspired to start incorporating some of these into my own life.
That's great.
It's like I'm finally being given the tools I need to not just survive social situations, but to actually enjoy them.
And speaking of enjoying social situations, there's one area that tends to be particularly challenging for introverts, and that's small talk.
Oh no, not small talk. Can't we just skip that part?
I wish. But the good news is that quietly stoic reframe small talk in a way that might actually make you less resistant to it.
Okay, nothing.
Ready for this? Odosnak calls small talk the bridge to deeper connection.
A bridge. Okay, I'm listening.
He argues that small talk isn't about exchanging meaningless pleasantries. It's about finding those initial points of connection that can lead to more engaging conversations.
Okay.
It's like dipping your toes in the water before you dive in.
Okay, that's a much better way to look at it.
Yeah.
But how do we make small talk less awkward and more well-meaningful? I feel like I always say the wrong thing or just end up talking about the weather.
He breaks it down into a kind of anatomy of good small talk. There's the opener, the flow, and the transition.
Okay.
The opener is all about going beyond those generic "how are you?" or "what's up?"
Right.
and starting with something a little more specific and engaging.
Okay, so what kind of openers are we talking about?
A genuine compliment, a thoughtful observation about your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
or an open-ended question that invites the other person to share something about themselves.
Okay.
For example, you could say, "That's a beautiful scarf. Where did you find it?"
Okay.
Or, "This place has a really cool vibe. Have you been here before?"
Yeah.
Or even something as simple as, "What brings you to this event tonight?"
I like those. They feel more personal
Yes.
than just defaulting to what do you do, which always feels a bit like an interview.
Exactly. And those kinds of openers invite the other person to share something more interesting about themselves.
Right.
Which takes the pressure off you to be witty or entertaining right out of the gate.
Right. I like that. Okay. So we've got the opener.
Mm-hmm.
What about the flow? How do we keep the conversation moving naturally without it feeling forced or awkward?
This is where those amazing listening skills come into play.
Yes.
Nod, smile, make eye contact, and really pay attention to what the other person is saying.
Okay.
Show them that you're genuinely interested,
Mm-hmm.
and ask follow-up questions that show you're listening and that encourage them to elaborate.
So instead of asking, do you like this band,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a yes or no question,
Right.
that can lead to a dead end.
Yeah.
You could ask, what kind of music are you into?
Exactly.
Or what's your favorite concert you've ever been to?
Exactly. Those open-ended questions invite a much more interesting and engaging conversation.
I like it.
And Otis Nack gives another great tip for keeping the flow going.
Okay.
Mirroring and matching.
Okay.
So if the person you're talking to is very animated and enthusiastic, be a bit more expressive yourself.
Oh, that's interesting.
If they're more reserved, keep your tone calm and steady.
It's like finding that subtle balance
Yeah.
between being authentically you and also creating a sense of rapport with the other person.
Exactly.
I can see how this would make small talk feel less like a performance and more like a genuine connection.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's the transition,
Okay.
which is how you gracefully move the conversation to a new topic,
Mm-hmm.
dive deeper into something that's been mentioned,
Okay.
or simply wrap things up.
The wrap, but that's the part I always struggle with.
I know what you mean.
I feel like I either awkwardly linger
Yeah.
or rush away with like a mumbled goodbye.
Don't worry, Otis Snack has some great tips for that too.
Okay, good.
He suggests having a few polite closing lines ready,
Oh.
like, "It was lovely chatting with you, but I need to grab a drink now."
Okay.
Or, "I really enjoyed hearing about your work. I need to circulate a bit more, but I hope we can connect again soon."
Having those phrases ready to go takes away the pressure of trying to come up with the perfect thing to say in the moment.
Right.
It's like having an exit strategy.
It is.
For those times when you're starting to feel drained or the conversation's naturally winding down.
Exactly. And it allows you to leave the conversation on a positive note without making things awkward.
You know, I'm starting to see how small talk, when approached with this kind of intentionality and skill, can actually be a valuable tool for building connections.
Yeah,
Even for us introverts.
absolutely.
It's not about trying to be someone we're not.
Uh-huh.
It's about using our natural strengths to create those genuine moments of connection.
Exactly.
Okay, this is a total game changer for me. I always dreaded small talk,
Yeah,
but now I'm actually starting to see it as a bridge to something more meaningful.
I love that.
And speaking of building connections,
Yes.
there's one more area that we need to tackle, and that's networking.
The dreaded N-word. It's enough to make even the most outgoing person break out in a cold sweat.
Tell me about it. But the thing is, I know networking is important,
Yeah,
especially in my field.
right.
I just wish there was a way to do it without feeling like I'm selling my soul.
Well, you're in luck.
Okay.
Because Quietly Stoic offers a refreshingly different approach to networking.
Okay.
One that's much more aligned with the introverted nature.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Yeah.
How do we network like a Stoic introvert?
First, let's just redefine what networking even means.
Okay.
Odosnak challenges that traditional idea that it's all about meeting as many people as possible and handing out business cards like candy.
Right, the stereotypical networking event.
Right. He sees networking as relationship building.
That already feels so much less intimidating.
It is. And it's about quality over quantity.
Right.
It's about connecting with people on a more genuine level, even if it's just a few individuals.
Yeah.
He gives a step-by-step strategy that's tailored for introverts,
Okay.
starting with setting clear intentions before attending an event.
Okay.
What do you hope to gain from this experience? Do you want to learn about a specific industry, connect with someone in a certain role, or just practice being more comfortable in social settings?
Having those intentions in mind gives you a sense of purpose, which I think is so important for introverts.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It helps us avoid feeling overwhelmed or lost in the crowd.
Exactly. And then he encourages us to start small.
Okay.
You don't have to dive into the deep end right away.
Right.
Begin by chatting with the person next to you, complimenting someone's outfit, or even approaching someone who looks as uncomfortable as you feel.
I love that. It's like building up those networking muscles with those little reps of connection.
I love that analogy.
Rather than trying to bench press the entire social scene.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And once you've initiated a conversation, Odosnak suggests leveraging one of the introvert's greatest strengths, asking great questions.
Ooh, yes.
We're naturally curious and tend to be good listeners, so this is where we can really shine.
Okay, so what kind of questions are we talking about? Give me some examples.
Instead of that default, what do you do?
Right.
Try asking, what's been the most exciting part of your work lately? Or, how did you get into your field? Or, what's a project you're really proud of?
Oh, I like those. They're so much more interesting than just talking about job titles.
Right.
And it takes the pressure off me to be constantly talking about myself.
Exactly. And speaking of taking the pressure off,
Yes.
Odosnak also suggests shifting our focus from selling ourselves to adding value to others.
Okay, what does that look like in a networking context?
It could be as simple as sharing a resource that might be helpful to them, offering to connect them with someone in your network, or just being a good listener and providing support.
It's like approaching networking as a way to build genuine relationships.
Yes.
Rather than just collecting business cards and hoping for the best.
Exactly. And one final point about networking, which I think is really important for introverts.
Yeah.
Know when to exit gracefully.
Yes.
Not every interaction will lead to a lasting connection, and that's okay.
It's about being respectful of your own energy levels and knowing when you need to take a break.
Precisely. And Odosnak gives some helpful phrases for exiting politely.
Okay.
Like, it was great talking with you, but I need to mingle a bit more. Or, I really enjoyed hearing about your work. I'll let you go, but I hope we can connect again soon.
Having those phrases in your back pocket can make exiting feel a lot less awkward.
It definitely can. And he also provides some great tips for following up after a networking event without feeling pushy or inauthentic.
Because the follow-up is important, right?
It is.
It's a way to show that you're genuinely interested in building a relationship.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
He suggests sending a brief personalized message within 48 hours of meeting someone.
Okay.
Mention something specific you remember from your conversation, and if possible, offer something of value like a relevant article or an introduction to someone in your network.
It's about turning that initial encounter into a more lasting connection.
Exactly.
But what about those of us who just can't handle those big networking events, no matter how much we prepare or how many Stoic principles we apply?
That's a great question. And Odosnak acknowledges that those large gatherings can be incredibly draining for introverts.
Right.
He suggests exploring alternatives, like one-on-one meetings with people you admire, joining online communities related to your interests or profession, or volunteering for projects where you can connect with like-minded individuals.
Those are all great ways to build relationships in a more low-key and intentional way.
They are.
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from Quietly Stoic is that it's not about trying to become an extrovert.
Yes.
It's about recognizing that introversion has its own unique strengths. And that we can use those strengths to navigate the social world in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of the most important topics for introverts.
Okay.
Managing social fatigue. Even the most enjoyable social interaction can leave us feeling drained and in need of some serious downtime.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like I need a week of hibernation after just one evening out.
And that's perfectly normal. But so many of us feel guilty about needing that downtime. We worry that we're being antisocial or that we're letting people down.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Quietly Stoic gives us permission to prioritize our well-being.
Yes, it does.
The Stoics were all about recognizing the importance of rest and recovery.
Okay.
They knew that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Love that.
Odosnak gives some practical strategies for how to recharge our batteries, and it starts with scheduling solitude.
Okay.
Just as we schedule meetings and appointments,
Yes.
we need to block out time in our calendars for activities that replenish our energy.
That's something I've been trying to get better at.
Yeah, it's so easy to let those pockets of free time get filled up
I know.
with other people's demands or with things we feel like we should be doing.
Exactly.
But remember, prioritizing your well-being is not selfish.
Right.
It's actually an act of self-care that allows you to show up more fully for others when you are interacting with them.
So what are some good ways to spend that solitude time? I mean, sometimes I just end up scrolling through social media, which I know isn't exactly restorative.
Right, but think about the activities that truly bring you joy and replenish your energy.
Okay.
It could be an hour of quiet reading,
Yeah.
a walk in nature,
Mm-hmm.
a long bath,
Right.
listening to calming music,
Yeah.
or even just sitting in silence and letting your mind wander.
It's about finding those activities that help you disconnect from the external world and reconnect with yourself.
Exactly. And Odosnak also suggests engaging in low-stimulation activities that don't require a lot of mental or emotional energy.
Yep.
Things like journaling, gentle stretching, or working on a creative hobby can be incredibly restorative. He also talks about the importance of setting boundaries to prevent getting to that point of complete social exhaustion.
Right. Which is so key.
Absolutely. He encourages us to be upfront about our need for downtime,
Yeah.
to plan buffer zones before and after social events, and to be mindful of how much time we're spending on social media, which, as you mentioned, can be just as draining as in-person interactions.
He also suggests creating like a recharge ritual
Yeah.
that we can practice after particularly draining social experiences.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as, taking a long bath with Epsom salts, reading a favorite book,
Yeah.
listening to calming music, or spending some time in nature.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you kind of decompress and reconnect with yourself.
It's like giving yourself permission to unwind and replenish those like depleted social batteries.
Exactly.
And it makes so much sense. If we want to show up as our best selves in our social interactions, we need to make sure we're taking care of our own needs first.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of managing social fatigue.
Okay.
Reflection.
Reflection. Like thinking about how awkward I was at that party.
Not necessarily. It's more about taking a step back after a social event
Okay.
and asking yourself some questions. What went well? What felt challenging? What did you learn? What would you do differently next time?
It's like turning those social interactions into opportunities for growth
Yes.
and self-awareness.
Exactly. And by reflecting on your experiences, you can identify patterns, adjust your approach, and ultimately make those social situations more enjoyable and less draining.
Okay. I'm definitely going to try that. I usually just beat myself up after a social event, focusing on all the things I did wrong or could have done better. But reflecting on like the positive aspects and what I learned is a much more empowering approach.
It is. And finally, Odosnak reminds us that feeling guilty about needing to recharge is counterproductive.
Right.
Rest is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom.
It's like you said earlier, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to prioritize our well-being and to honor those needs for solitude and recovery.
This has been such a helpful conversation. I'm feeling a lot more confident about navigating the social world as an introvert.
I'm so glad.
But there's one final concept from Quietly Stoic that I'd love to explore: owning the room quietly. It's such an intriguing idea, especially for those of us who don't exactly identify as the life of the party.
I know, it sounds like a paradox, doesn't it?
Nah.
Quietly owning the room. But Odosnak's approach is so brilliant because he reframes the whole concept of what it means to command attention and make an impact.
So it's not about trying to be the loudest or the most outgoing person in the room, because that's just never going to be me.
Exactly. Odosnak argues that true presence isn't about being the center of attention. It's about creating an atmosphere of trust, focus, and authority through quiet confidence.
Ooh, I like that. It's about letting our inner strength shine through rather than trying to force ourselves into a mold that doesn't fit.
Exactly. And he breaks this idea of quiet confidence down into 3 pillars: body language, voice, and intention.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with body language. What are some practical ways to project confidence without feeling like I'm putting on a show or trying to be someone I'm not?
It's more about subtle cues than grand gestures. Podosnek emphasizes the importance of standing tall, claiming your space, and making eye contact.
It's like those nonverbal signals that say, I'm here, I'm present, I'm confident, even if you're feeling a little nervous on the inside.
Exactly. And he also suggests using pauses effectively. Instead of rushing your movements or speech, slow down, take a breath, and let your actions and words carry weight.
It's about moving with intention and purpose rather than getting caught up in that frenetic energy that can sometimes dominate social situations.
You got it. And then there's your voice. Introverts often have a naturally calming and thoughtful tone, which can be incredibly powerful.
So we don't need to try to force ourselves to be louder or more animated than we naturally are, because that always feels so awkward and inauthentic.
Exactly. Embrace your natural voice. Odisnak suggests speaking at a steady, deliberate pace, lowering your tone slightly, and pausing for effect before and after key points. This gives your words more impact without having to shout or dominate the conversation.
Those are great tips. I often feel like I need to speak louder to be heard. But you're right, sometimes it's about the quality of what you say, not the volume.
And then there's the intention piece. Odosnak emphasizes the importance of approaching any social situation with a clear sense of purpose. Before you even enter the room, ask yourself, what's my intention here? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to contribute? Let your intention guide your actions and interactions.
It's about showing up with a sense of purpose, even if that purpose is simply to learn something new or to connect with one or two people on a meaningful level.
Exactly. And Odosnak provides some practical strategies for putting all of this into practice. He talks about the power of the first 5 minutes, leveraging your listening skills, owning the spotlight when it's your turn to speak, and exiting gracefully.
I'm loving all of this. It's like a whole new way of approaching social interactions, one that feels both empowering and authentic. But let's break down some of the strategies you mentioned. What's so important about the first 5 minutes of entering a room?
Odosnak argues that those initial moments set the tone for how others perceive you. So before you even walk in, take a deep breath, center yourself, and set an intention for how you want to show up.
It's all about entering the space with a sense of purpose and quiet confidence, even if you're feeling a bit nervous on the inside. I can definitely see how that would make a difference.
It does. And then once you're in the room, smile genuinely at a few people. Start with a simple observation or question to break the ice, and let your calm demeanor set the tone for the interactions that follow.
It's like you're setting the stage for the kind of interactions you want to have, and you're signaling to others that you're open to connecting, but in a way that feels authentic and approachable.
Exactly. And then once you've made those initial connections, it's time to leverage one of the introvert's greatest strengths: listening.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Our superpower.
Yeah.
I'm ready to put it to work.
Remember, when you listen attentively, ask thoughtful questions, and reflect back what you've heard, you create a sense of connection that goes way beyond superficial chit-chat. People feel seen and heard when you truly listen, and that's a gift that introverts can offer so effortlessly.
It feels good to know that our natural inclination to listen is actually a strength, not a weakness. I used to think I needed to be more talkative and outgoing to make an impact, but now I'm starting to see that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just listen.
I couldn't agree more. And then there are those moments when, even as introverts, we might find ourselves in the spotlight. Maybe it's our turn to present an idea, share our thoughts in a meeting, or simply answer a question in a group setting.
Those moments can be so nerve-wracking, but I'm curious to hear what Odosnek suggests for handling those situations with more confidence and grace.
He offers some great tips, and they all come back to that idea of embracing your natural style and using those Stoic principles to ground yourself in the present moment.
So no need to suddenly transform into a stand-up comedian or a motivational speaker.
Exactly. Just be you. Take your time before responding. Pause, breathe, and then when you're ready, speak clearly and concisely.
I like that. It's a reminder that we don't have to try to be someone we're not. We can just be ourselves, and that's enough.
It is enough. And remember, it's okay to be brief. You don't have to feel pressured to fill every silence or to keep talking just for the sake of talking.
That's such a relief to hear. I always feel like I need to keep the conversation going, even when I don't really have anything else to say.
It's a common trap, but it's okay to let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Sometimes a well-placed pause can actually make your words more impactful.
I'm starting to see how this whole approach can really shift our mindset from feeling like we need to perform to just being present and authentic. It's a subtle shift, but I think it can make a huge difference in how we experience those moments when we're called upon to speak up.
It absolutely can. And then, of course, there's the art of exiting gracefully, which we touched on earlier. It's important to know when to end a conversation or leave an event, even if it's going well.
This is where I always struggle. I never know how to end things without feeling like I'm being rude or abrupt.
I know it can feel tricky, but Odo Snack suggests having a few polite closing lines ready to go. Something like, "It was great talking with you, but I need to grab a drink now." Or, "I really enjoyed hearing about your work. I'll let you go, but I hope we can connect again soon."
Having those phrases ready is so helpful. It takes the pressure off trying to come up with the perfect thing to say in the moment.
And it allows you to end the interaction on a positive note without feeling awkward or guilty. You know, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive into Quietly Stoic, and I'm feeling incredibly inspired by all of the practical advice and wisdom that Odo Snock offers. He truly understands the introverted experience and provides a roadmap for navigating the social world in a way that feels authentic and empowering.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the most important takeaway for me is that introversion is not a weakness. It's a strength that we can leverage to create meaningful connections and to live a fulfilling life on our own terms. So welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Quietly Stoic. It's been quite a journey exploring how this ancient philosophy can be such a powerful tool, for navigating the social
It
world,
really has.
especially for us introverts.
Absolutely.
I feel like this book has given me so much to think about.
Yeah.
And I already feel like I'm approaching social situations with a new sense of awareness and intention.
That's great.
But before we wrap things up, I wanted to circle back to something that Odosnak mentions in his concluding note
Okay.
that I found really thought-provoking. He talks about the importance of not letting labels define us.
That's such a crucial point, especially when it comes to introversion.
Right.
You know, while it's helpful to understand and embrace our introverted tendencies, we don't have to wear that label as a badge of honor or let it become like our entire identity.
It's about recognizing that introversion, like any personality trait,
Yeah.
has its nuances. It's not a black and white thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
There are shades of gray.
Exactly. And Odosnak points out that sometimes, our introverted tendencies might actually be holding us back
Oh, interesting.
from fully engaging with the world or expressing ourselves authentically.
Okay.
So it's not about denying our introversion,
Yeah.
but about being mindful of those moments when it might be leading us towards avoidance or withdrawal.
It's about finding that balance right.
Yes.
Honoring our need for solitude and reflection, while also challenging ourselves to step outside of our comfort zones when it's important to do so.
Exactly.
Like maybe I decline that big party invitation,
Right.
but I make an effort to connect with a colleague over lunch
Yeah.
or join a small group activity that aligns with my interests.
That's a great example. It's about recognizing that introversion doesn't have to be a limiting factor.
Right.
It's just part of who we are.
Yeah.
And we can use those Stoic principles to work with our nature, not against it.
I'm really starting to see how this whole approach can be so empowering. It's not about trying to become someone we're not.
Yeah.
It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves,
Absolutely.
honoring our unique needs and tendencies, while also using those Stoic tools to navigate the challenges of social interaction.
I love that.
This deep dive into Quietly Stoic has been such a gift.
Me too.
It's given me like a whole new perspective on introversion and social interaction.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a toolkit of practical strategies that I can use to navigate those situations that used to feel so overwhelming.
I agree.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think the most important takeaway for me is that introversion is not a weakness.
Yes.
It's a strength that we can leverage to create meaningful connections and to live fulfilling lives on our own terms.
And it's not just about social interactions either.
Right.
These Stoic principles can be applied to all areas of our lives.
Oh, absolutely.
From our work to our relationships to our own personal growth.
It's like a framework for living with more intention, resilience, and inner peace.
Yes.
Regardless of whether you identify as an introvert or an extrovert.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that we have more control over our thoughts and reactions than we often realize.
Yeah.
And that we can choose to approach challenges with a sense of calm and clarity rather than getting swept away by anxiety or negativity.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
I'm so glad we had a chance to dive deep into Quietly Stoic today.
I too.
So to our listeners out there, as we wrap up this exploration,
Yes.
I want to leave you with a question. What's one small step you can take today to approach a social situation with more calm and intention? Maybe it's practicing one of those micro habits we discussed, like setting an intention for the day or celebrating a tiny social victory.
Yeah.
Maybe it's using breath work to anchor yourself in the present moment or having a few exit lines ready to go.
Whatever that step may be.
Yeah,
Remember that you have the power to choose how you show up in the world.
so true.
Embrace your unique strengths, be kind to yourself, and keep diving deep.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time with a whole new set of sources and insights to explore. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those conversations flowing.
You've listened to our latest episode of Right Here, Right Now